Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
AT&T knows that staying on top of your modern life is about staying connected. Whether you're at home, at work, or at play, you always need the ability to go full speed ahead. And that means you need a data plan that has your back. One that works day and night and updates constantly. Right now with AT&T, you can get unlimited talk, text, and data usage with the first 1.5 gigabytes at device speed for $40 a month on GoPhone. After a $5 account credit each month when you sign up for auto refill and make your first payment of $45. All on the network with the nation's strongest 4G LTE signal. No credit check, no annual contract, no joke. When you're unlimited, there's nothing stopping you. AT&T, mobilizing your world.
Unused 1.5 gigabytes data carries over for one 30-day period if your plan renews on time. Expires after first 30-day period or with plan change. Data usage exceeding the high-speed allowance will result in reduced data speeds of up to 128 kilobytes per second for the rest of your 30-day term. Compatible device required. Get $5 credit after first order refill payment. Credit applied within 30 days. Account must be active. Usage and other restrictions apply. Signal strength claim based only on average 4G LTE signal strength for national carriers. See store for details.
Deborah Harry has come here first on a solo album.
My baby has problems, I think it's quite unique. She saves lots of money, not brushing all her teeth. But I never buy her makeup or lipstick that is red. She looks so good without it. Plus my baby's got no hair, got no head, no head, got no head, no head, got no head, no head, got no head, no head. We go out to the movies to have a real good time, and everybody stares because her body looks so fine. They give me dirty looks as if my baby's cold and dead. I tell them that she's full of life, she just ain't got no head, got no head, no head, got.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Mad Scientist Sports Lab, where the beacons are lit, the experiments are on the chalkboard, and the test subjects, they come rolling in. My name is Nick Piccarelli. I am the Mad Scientist of Sports, and I will be running solo tonight, as my apprentice, Andrew Gluclove, will not be joining us. He had a family emergency. Everything's okay, so we wish him well, but he will be back next week. Let's get things started right off the bat, though, ladies and gentlemen. We're going to be talking some fantasy football, and, of course, it's a long time coming, but I have to have her back on the show. She's one of the best fantasy football minds that I happen to know, and she was a regular with me last season. She's going to be a regular again with me this season. Ladies and gentlemen, the lovely, the talented, and, of course, the beautiful Allie Fontana.
Hey, Nick. Thanks for having me back. It's hard to believe that it's that time of year already.
I know. It's amazing. Well, and also joining us this evening is another very good friend of mine who's been a free repeater here in the lab. You can find him on DraftKings, and I actually read his stuff in the Football Diehards magazine, in which I couldn't believe I was actually looking at his pretty mug in a magazine. But he also happens to be the co-host of a really good fantasy podcast called The Fantasy Goodfellas. Ladies and gentlemen, welcoming him back into the lab, Justin Lanero. Justin, how you doing?
Doing all right, Nick. Thanks for having me back on. It's good to talk some football. I'm anxiously awaiting week one to start. I think all the overanalyzation is starting to happen because it's such a long off season. Good to talk to you, man.
Yeah, it's actually, I got to tell you, the anticipation for the upcoming season, the tension is palpable, especially when you do as many leagues as you guys probably do, as well as I do and everything. But I got to tell you, this is something I'm really looking forward to, getting the ball rolling, talking with you guys. Obviously, the big news to start with during this week was the injury to Arian Foster. The groin injury looks like he will be out for at least 3 months. Allie, I'll start with you. What type of impact will that be on, obviously Foster going in a draft or anything like that? And who are you looking at in training camp to see who can pick up the pieces with him being out for a prolonged period of time?
Well, I mean, as far as what it does for him. I mean, many of us have done like MSL 10s or 50s, where you're drafting in sort of, best ball type formats and you start early because you're a junkie. So if you've drafted and you put Arian Foster on your team, you're, Sadville right now. But, they dialed back a bit today. I saw how long they expect him to be out. Now they're saying 4 to 6 weeks, but I wouldn't count on him for probably half the season. And I think in a league where I had a 12-team league where I had a short bench, I might just pass him by. If I had a deeper bench, or in a bigger league, you may sort of take a shot on Foster, after like the 10th round if he's sitting there, because, it depends on if you have waivers or not. I'm not really looking to hop on the Alfred Blue bandwagon myself. I think he looked kind of pedestrian last year. And it doesn't seem like they're going to necessarily have one guy in that role. So I'll be curious to see what happens with Chris Polk. If he could stay healthy, he could potentially get goal line and short yardage work. There's Jonathan Grimes, who's a bit forgotten there. He kind of interests me. I think he's probably the closest to an Arian Foster. He didn't get a lot of work last year, but I think I saw on Fantasy Pros that, Blue now has, like a ranking of 46. So that's like a fourth running back, but depending on the league, if you think that he's just going to come in and replace Foster, they need to run the ball because of the quarterback situation there and kind of a bad O-line. So I'm just saying that I'll probably let somebody else draft Alfred Blue and maybe look for Polk or Grimes later in the draft, depending on what we see in camp and over the next several weeks.
And Justin, what are your thoughts on Arian Foster, and what do you have planned for him if he were going to be on your team, or anybody that's going to pick up the slack for Houston as well?
Well, I have to agree with Allie and just about everything she had to say. When he's on the field, he's a top 5 talent. The last 4 or 5 seasons, he's been a top 5 talent. It's the tread on his tires that Gary Kubiak just absolutely ran him into the ground, and that's starting to show now at 28 years old. Like Allie said, it's a pedestrian situation as far as Alfred Blue and Chris Polk and Jonathan Grimes. It's a growth. If you take Arian Foster out of the equation, you have a very, very vanilla Houston Texan offense. And it's sad because there are some pieces there, particularly DeAndre Hopkins, that I was thrilled to look forward to seeing with the departure of Andre Johnson this season. And but without Arian Foster, there is zero balance, and it's going to be a flat offense with Brian Hoyer at the helm. So it's probably a situation that I'm going to avoid. I agree. I mean, you can stash him late, probably rounds 10 or 11, and then coasting into the playoffs. Arian Foster would be a great guy to have. And I think what's interesting about the daily fantasy side of things is you're not married to a guy like Arian Foster. So there will be a week or two where an Alfred Blue or Chris Polk could be a steal, definitely in tournaments. And, Alf Morris had a couple decent games last year when he had to play. So it's an icky situation, and it's sad as a fan to see Arian Foster just break down because he's a guy that couldn't stay healthy in college and it carried over to the NFL. But like I said, when he is healthy, he's arguably a top 3 running back in the game, but it's rarely ever that he can put a complete season together.
Well, Justin, you actually brought up a really good point because Arian Foster, what could be the driving force for the Houston Texans offense, especially with the departure of Andre Johnson, especially with, changing offensive philosophy these days. Now, you brought up DeAndre Hopkins. How much of an impact are you going to see in his numbers, knowing now that teams can pretty much bracket him to the point that, they don't have to worry about a running back of Foster's caliber coming out of the backfield?
I mean, that's just it right there. I mean, you know, when you don't have to worry about Aaron Foster, there's not a lot that you have to worry about at all. I mean, they did draft Jalen Strong, who I'm interested to see. The seasoned veteran Cecil Shorts is now a Houston Texan. But aside from that cast there, like I said, it's a flat, generic offense, and it's going to be gross. So you remove Arian Foster from the team. I mean, there's been points in his career where he's been 60, 70% of that offense. So it's a shame because I was curious to see what Nuke Hopkins can do. I think he's a very talented kid, and obviously he has the keys to the castle now that Andre Johnson is in Indianapolis. So, but without Foster, it's going to be, like I said, it's going to be gross. I can't stress that enough.
Allie, if you had to put numbers on DeAndre Hopkins right now after this pretty big blow to the Houston Texans offense with Foster's injury, do you see a drop in numbers from all the predictions that have come out in all the magazines, or do you think that maybe it may not impact in such a way that the number it'll be the same numbers, but it'll be more spread out throughout the season?
Well, I mean, I do think that he had a pretty decent catch rate last season. I mean, I still think, 80 to 85 catches potentially and, 1,000 yards. We'll have to see. I mean, I think you're safer drafting him as a number 2. A lot of people, though, when you draft in a lot of expert leagues or industry leagues, the numbers are a little skewed because people go for people they like and they go earlier because they know that other people like those players. But I think if you're drafting with, in your league, your home league, or with a bunch of friends or something, even though he's the number 1 guy on his team, I think if you take him as kind of your wide receiver 2, you're putting, less of a risk on your team. I do think we just need to see what this team looks like. We've talked about, Foster not being there, and then it will kind of be ugly. But, Andre Johnson had some good years and some less than ideal situations. We can see that. I like him as kind of a mid-level, a little earlier than like a mid-level 2 guy, sort of a high 2, but I do think it's a little scary, just given the situation. So those are the numbers, though, about 1,000 to 1,100 yards and 80 to 85 catches, but we'll see.
Well, I look at it like this. I look at this as exactly how Justin laid it out and how you laid it out as well. It's going to be an extremely vanilla offense without Arian Foster in there. And with all the backs not scaring everybody, it's going to put a crimp on the numbers for Hopkins at least the first 8 games of the season. Now, if, and that's a big if, Foster would have come back by, say, week 8, week 9, and we get a good half season out of him, we might see some vast improvement in the numbers on Hopkins. But right now, I look at DeAndre Hopkins and I'm like, yeah, well, I was thinking about drafting him here. I'm not going to draft him now until about here. So, and I'm meaning like at least a couple of rounds lower than where I had originally projected him. So it's going to be
his ADP, in a 12-team PPR, his ADP is 309, roughly. So, for a lot of people, that's either their second wide receiver or in some cases their first, depending on, who they pick. So I would probably, when you look at people around him, there's Benjamin, Jordan Matthews, Emmanuel Sanders, Cooks, Mike Evans. I mean, there's some other guys there that I'd set my sights on over Hopkins personally.
Definitely. Absolutely. I couldn't agree anymore. I mean, it's high expectations, and then things can change overnight, and we just saw that when you take a guy like Arian Foster off that offense, things are going to change quickly. And now you look at DeAndre Hopkins, and chances are they're going to be down at a lot of football games, so there'll be some garbage time where he's going to get force-fed, and obviously that translates to fantasy football. So We saw that for many years with Andre Johnson, an awful quarterback play his whole career in Houston. But he was zeroed in on, by just about every awful quarterback that was there. So I think this hurts his stock. It has to hurt his stock. And again, as a fan, you're going to think twice. And just like some of the names that Allie mentioned, particularly Brandon Cooks, in my opinion, you're going to take a harder look at some of these guys right around his ADP.
Exactly. For me, the ADP at third round, ninth pick of the third round, I don't see him going down. With this injury, I could see by the time to see the last fantasy draft is taking place, I could see him going down to at least maybe the fifth, possibly sixth round. So that, like I said, that's just me. I know I'm not going to touch him until at least my second, possibly third wide receiver, especially in that offense right now. Moving along. This is good, very interesting. We all know that Tom Brady now has been suspended 4 games by the NFL. It's right now in the court system. We do not know what's going on, but we're going to play a little hypothetical. The hypothetical is this. The suspension is upheld in the court of law. Brady is going to be out the first 4 games. And now you're a fantasy owner, and you're staring at Jimmy Garoppolo in your hands. You know you're going to get him the first 4 games. Everybody and the mother is still going to draft Brady. They're probably going to take Brady pretty high, going to stash him, but you know they're going to try to handcuff Garoppolo as well. We saw the schedule for the first 4 games. What do you think you can expect fantasy-wise from Jimmy Garoppolo? Justin, I'll start with you.
I think you're going to see a conservative approach. I mean, they're not going to throw him into the lion's den and expect him to be throwing the football 40, 50 times a game. It's just not reasonable. I mean, they're going to talk about another vanilla offense. If you remove Tom Brady from the New England Patriots offense, it is vanilla, and they are probably a 500 team at best. He is a difference maker. He's obviously a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's somebody, again, I can't stress the DFS side of things. You would look at a matchup that would favor Jimmy Garoppolo and probably exploit it. As far as a season-long league, I don't see a ton of value there. When Tom Brady ruined his knee in 2007, it was 2000. Yeah, was it 2007, 2006? I should know this. I'm a little cloudy. And Matt Castle came in. They won 10 games. He went 10-6, and then he was signed to a huge contract in Kansas City. But I cannot see Bill Belichick throwing Jimmy Garoppolo, into the lion's den and expecting him to go up against some of these secondaries that he is going to face. So it's, to my understanding, this battle is not over. Tom Brady is hard-headed as they come, and if he's not going to take a 1-game suspension, because that would be an admission of guilt. So I wouldn't be surprised in the least bit if he doesn't serve any games. I think it hurts the league by not featuring Tom Brady on a global level. I mean, he's a global icon at this point. But to me, Jimmy Garoppolo has 0 season-long relevance, but definitely if the suspension is upheld and indeed Tom Brady sits 4 games, I know they have Jacksonville early on. There's probably a couple games he would be a sneaky play and definitely some of the larger tournaments on, say, DraftKings or FanDuel or any other DFS site.
Allie, what are your thoughts?
Well, I completely agree. I've actually drafted Tom Brady in the 10th round a bunch of times, and I did not take or handcuff him with Jimmy Garoppolo. I either had like a Phillip Rivers or a Sam Bradford or somebody else that, and I'm talking about a season-long league that I felt more confident in terms of getting over those 4 weeks or whatever. So, but I do agree with Justin that those early weeks where he could potentially be the stand-in, he's going to be dirt cheap. And, when you're looking to build your DFS roster, you could take advantage of him. And we need to see him more. I mean, I think he had 27 attempts last year, so we don't have a big sample size. What's interesting about New England, too, is that they have, with Brady being out, is what do you do with the other guys on the team? And then just in the last couple of days, Blunt has an MCL sprain, so he's basically going to be sidelined for the rest of camp and the preseason. And then Travaris Cadet has a hamstring injury, so he's a bit bummed that he's, with his chance to shine, so to speak, and maybe get that Vereen role, he's out. So it's basically Bolden, Gray, and White right now. So that'll be interesting to see what happens with these other, running back sideline, Brady potentially out.
Well, I got to look at it like this. And this is like, for me, I've been zeroing in on this situation, since it happened. So, and I got to say that, if I'm doing DFS, and if I see a very favorable matchup for the Patriots, I may take a chance, because you're going to look at Garoppolo. His salary for that week is not going to be very, very high at all. He would be very, very good value for a DFS start or two during the first 4 weeks of the season. But, of course, when Brady comes back, he's sliding to the bench. So as a viable fantasy person for a full season or anything like that, yeah, if you want to handcuff him, fine. But I don't think that would be completely viable. But as a DFS thing, if the matchup is favorable and the salary is low, and you can you can go elsewhere with the salary to make up for it, then I think Garoppolo would be a good play. But it's something that takes a lot of thought and a lot of patience, especially when it comes to something like this. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens the first 4 weeks of the season. Then again, like I said, the court can throw everything out. This whole conversation, will be all for naught, and Tom Brady will be the starter on week 1. So we just obviously we just don't know until everything is all settled up. So we're going to move along to the next topic. Are there any training camp battles that either of you are looking at that you may think will have a big impact on in fantasy football? Allie, I'll start with you.
Well, I think, some of the things, we have a lot of teams where people are injured, and, for example, the Atlanta Falcons backfield. I think both Freeman and Telvin Coleman are injured right now. Anton Smith, I think, is the only healthy guy, and so if you're looking, and the interesting thing is, too, Coleman, at least in a lot of drafts that I've been in, has gone ahead of Freeman. So we're kind of, in a difficult situation, because we don't really, Freeman was kind of the number one back in OTAs and through minicamp, and, he had a ton of praise from Shanahan and Quinn. And then, now both of these guys are sidelined for multiple weeks, so that misses time on the field. And so, again, if you're taking people as your running back 2 or 3 and you don't really know how the job shakes out, I think that's kind of something that we're missing seeing. And how do you get a feel for that, really? So that's kind of a bummer that we have so many of these injuries. This it's not uncommon, but it also kind of sucks, because you're making decisions and you really haven't seen how things shake out.
And what about you, Justin?
I'm looking closely. Nicely said, Allie, by the way, and I agree definitely. And it does suck to see some of these. We just talked about Arian Foster. Who wants to see a guy like that get hurt? And look at the names that we're talking about that could be his potential replacements. As fans, not even fantasy football players, it's kind of, you look at the situation, you want to see some of these studs on the field, and I'm taking a deep look at the San Diego Chargers platoon. I think Mike McCoy has made it clear that there's probably going to be some type of committee in San Diego. Obviously, they drafted Melvin Gordon in the first round out of Wisconsin. I think he's going to get a large load, similar to T.J. Yeldon in Jacksonville. Now it's a matter of who's going to get the leftovers. Donald Brown is still there, Danny Woodhead, Brandon Oliver. So to me, it's just another NFL committee. I think that's the direction most teams are heading now. 10 carries, 12 carries. I get 10, you get 10, and somebody else gets 10, and divvy them up like that. So it's something I'm looking, because Brandon Oliver had a couple great games last year, and obviously we know what Danny Woodhead's done over his career. So that's a situation that I'm definitely taking into account. It's difficult to gauge some of these roles this early. I mean, there's only, in 2015, and I think I said this years and years ago among some of my friends, I mean, there's only the bell cow is a dying breed. I mean, we're not seeing that anymore. There is Adrian Peterson. Of course, we don't know what he's going to do. There's Le'Veon Bell, there's Jamal Charles, Marshawn Lynch, maybe Eddie Lacy at this point. And then after that, the list gets really thin, and we're looking at a bunch of potential committees. So it's difficult to gauge, every NFL backfield at this point. But for me, the Chargers are definitely a team that I'm looking at.
The other kind of interesting situation, I saw several discussions about this because word came out that the Eagles are using Darren Sproles in the slot, so they're using him more as a receiver. And last year a lot of people drafted Darren Sproles as an RB2 or a flex, and he was fine in the beginning of the season, but he had very few snaps, and it's not always about how many just snaps, but how effective you are and the snaps that you get. But, that situation in Philadelphia has a lot of people curious about how they're going to divide the workload, among Murray, Matthews, and Darren Sproles. So I'm sort of curious to see what that looks like. And sometimes we don't really get a full look at a team's offense in the preseason. It seems to be going in that direction. They don't show us everything they have, so until week one, and then you start seeing things. But I'm sort of interested in that. I mean, I'd rather take a shot. I think that Matthews would be the likely guy if Murray goes down. So that's kind of interesting to me. But I don't have a problem taking him as like a flex guy or an RB4 because he falls pretty low in some of the drafts that I've been in. But I'm interested to see what happens with that. I'm not buying into Darren Sproles as a guy that I would draft in a 12-team league, but I do want to see how that shakes out.
And I agree wholeheartedly. I mean, you look at DeMarco Murray had touched the football more than I think I've ever seen any running back touch the football. They obviously moved Shady McCoy out, who led the league in rushing in 2013. And then they go and get Ryan Matthews. And I think that Darren Sproles is one of these guys that just kicks around, and he'll have some type of role carved out. And now it's a matter of how the football is going to be distributed. So it's going to be tough for DeMarco Murray to replicate what he did last year. And when you talk about Ryan Matthews, he's another guy that he cannot stay healthy. So but Philadelphia Eagle offense is definitely one it's going to be a lot of fun. They're going to score a lot of points.
It's going to be a lot of fun. But the other training camp battle that I'm really looking forward to watching though in Philadelphia happens to be a quarterback, because you got Sam Bradford and Mark Sanchez. Bradford. Everybody was still scratching their heads when Chip made the deal to trade Foles for Bradford, and coming off again an ACL injury. Sanchez had, even with Sanchez having a somewhat successful season last year in Chip Kelly's offense, it's going to be very interesting to watch that. Right now people are saying Sam Bradford is the number one quarterback right now. But remember, it just takes one hit, and we got to see if that knee can hold up for a whole season. So again, I'm going to be very interested to see how the quarterback situation shakes out over there, and it's definitely going to be a lot of fun. Well, just want to say to both of you, as always, thank you so much for joining me in the lab tonight. Justin, why don't you let the people know where they can find you on social media?
It can be found on Twitter at Llanero_Justin. Our podcast handle is at FGoodfellas, Fantasy Goodfellas. We just went under the footballdiehards.com wing. We're under their wing. We are affiliated with footballdiehards.com at this point, and we got a pretty good sponsorship from DraftKings. So it's definitely there. In fact, we have a Facebook page now, but Twitter is primarily where I can be found, and definitely, can't wait to see all these things come into fruition, Nick, and I appreciate having me on there.
Hey, no problem. Definitely going to have you on in the not-too-distant future. Have a good night, all right?
All right. You too, man. Thanks.
And, of course, Allie, dear, thank you so much for coming back on the show. Obviously, people are going to be a lot because, as everybody knows, Allie's Fantasy Alley is a staple on the Mad Scientist Sports Lab. So, Allie, why don't you let the good people know where they can find you?
Sure, you can follow me on Twitter at Allie Fontana. I'm there frequently and often, and I'll be contributing to the Fantasy Fix this season and hopefully a few other sites that I'll be happy to let you know about the next time I'm on.
Absolutely, and that will be very, very soon. I can pretty much tell you that much. So have a good one, okay?
All right, Nick. Thanks again. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye. And that was Allie Fontana and Justin Llanero. We talked a little bit about fantasy football, but now, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about some guts in football because I got two guys on with me right now that are that are hardcore when it comes to talking some good old-fashioned training camps as well as the Pro Football Hall of Fame. So first off, I'd like to introduce to you the Chicago Bears beat writer for NGSC Sports, as well as one of the biggest draft mavens that I happen to know. Very intelligent young man, also a really good radio show host. You got to listen to him on NGSC Sports on their flagship show. So without further ado, I give to you Mr. Montel Hardy. How you doing, Montel?
I'm doing great. It is a pleasure to be here with you today. How you doing?
Doing really well. And, of course, I could not have a show without having one half of the Asylum. Now, when you put the Mad Scientist and the Asylum together, you get nothing but wackiness, craziness, and some pretty damn good radio, as people have heard in the past. He is calling live from Canton, Ohio right now, as he is at the Pro Football Hall of Fame ceremony, calling in to give us a little update on what's happening out in Canton right now. It's not Briggs, it's the better half. Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Rick Flieger. How you doing, sir?
Mr. Ficcarelli, doing well, entering hour 4 of Jerome Bettis' acceptance speech. I believe he's up to 5th grade, so it seemed like a good time to step out.
Awesome. Yeah, I had a funny feeling because I was actually watching it on the TV and everything like that. We'll start with the Hall of Fame first, and obviously I'll start with you, Rick, because you're there. The crowd seems to be very, very enthusiastic, to say the least. But I think the most poignant thing that happened, and I think everybody would agree with me, was Junior Seau's induction and the words that Sydney spoke, in the video as well as afterwards on the big screen. I got to tell you, I think, if there was a dry eye in the house, I would have been shocked.
Yeah, no question about it. To be honest, the entire weekend seems to have been really in remembrance of Junior Seau. At Media Day, Friday afternoon, most players spent most of their time talking about Junior. His daughter just did an amazing job tonight. And really, you hate to bring up the argument again, but they gave her that long interview. Why not yet let the young lady make a speech? What an amazing speech. It was. These things, we've done this for a couple of years now. These things can honestly get a little dry, to be honest with you. That was easily the most touching moment I've ever seen.
Now, Montel, thoughts on Junior Seau? I mean, obviously, the induction? His induction was, to say the least, possibly, one of the highlights of what, for me, watching the Hall of Fame. And I've watched the Hall of Fame, induction ceremonies for a very long time now. And to listen to Sydney Seau speak about her dad, I think it was poetic justice that was a compromise reached with the Hall of Fame and the Seattle family to have her say some words, not only through the induction video, but actually on stage. I want to get your thoughts as well.
Yeah, and this was something that a lot of people worried about, including the NFL. You got to remember, heading into today, there was a little, will they, won't they let Seau's family speak at the thing, and they seem to come up with a happy compromise, and I'm glad because there is definitely some more story to be told on, the state Seau's brain was in at the time, but I was expecting the worst when it came to it, so I'm just glad that, at this point, they did his career justice, and his family seemed to be satisfied, and it just looked like the crowd as a unit enjoyed every second.
Now, Rick, obviously, you were watching all the speeches and everything like that. You already said Jerome Bettis. They saved him for last because it seemed like all of Pittsburgh traveled to Canton to watch his induction, and I actually had to put his speech on mute because after like 20 minutes, I'm like, okay, we don't need to know your whole life story and then your whole life story again and again. I mean, I know you're intelligent. You went to Notre Dame. You had an amazing career, but my God, man, people do have to go home and get some sleep. People have to do some reporting, and people actually want to go and grab a bite to eat or something like that. But you got to hand it to him though. I mean, this is a guy who, struggled as a Ram, was picked up by the Steelers and ended up having an amazing career. And you, living near the Pittsburgh area, watched him all the way through. How apropos is it, though, that he is the closer and his speech is definitely it's still going on right now, so...
Well, I mean, it makes perfect sense, 100%, because to be in Canton, we were there last year with the induction of Andre Reed, a ton of Buffalo Bill fans, Michael Strahan, a lot of people made the trip from New York. This is such an easy trip from Pittsburgh. I would say conservatively, just walking around the grounds. I can't tell you how many tens of thousands of people were in attendance. You couldn't get near. I stood in line for almost an hour to get into the hall to get to Radio Row when we did our show earlier. So that's what he meant to Pittsburgh, and we got a chance to talk to him Friday, and we have some sound clips for Media Day up on the site. And the one thing that sticks to me with Jerome Bettis, and this is one guy I was a real fan of growing up. I was a teenager really when I really started getting into football when his career took off, and we got a chance to talk to him about the running back committees now, if you want to talk a little bit about fantasy football and the way the game's played now. And I think he nailed it, and I love the honesty, and this is who Jerome Bettis is. We asked him, why don't we see the road grader types, the 30-carry-a-game types? And he said, quite frankly, the guys aren't tough enough now. They can't do it anymore. You need the committee. These guys aren't bred from high school and college to rush for 30 carries. That's my memory of Jerome Bettis. You turn around, you handed him the ball 30 times, he got better as the game went on and came the fourth quarter. He was just running people over. In Chicago out there, Brian Urlacher can tell you that story. That's what that man could do, and that's the picture that I remember of Jerome Bettis.
Now, Montel, what are your memories of Jerome Bettis, and is there anything that sticks out in your mind when talking about him?
Yeah, I think you just mentioned it. There was a time when he went toe-to-toe with Brian Urlacher and drove him back a little bit. So, that was a great memory. I always think about that Steelers Super Bowl run that, ironically, he almost cost him that run, but, with a fumble late. But, some things happened, and he got the magical send-off ending that a lot of players really want in their careers. So, I think about those moments, and I also think about just his dominance. He modernized the role of a short yardage specialist, and it's still useful today.
Now, one stat that I found really amazing tonight is, and I'm talking about Charles Haley. he's the only player to win 5 Super Bowls. Now I sat back and I was like, wait a minute, 5 Super Bowls. And I was thinking, wait a minute, but he only won a few with I know he won 3 with Dallas, and it dawned upon me. I was like, oh, wait a minute, he actually also won 2 with the 49ers when he was probably one of the most dominant defensive ends of his time. Well, one of the most dominant defensive ends of his time. And I sat, and his speech was like, to me, the perfect speech. Short, sweet, to the point, just like the way he played. And I gotta tell you, the standing ovation that he got from not only the fans but some of the Hall of Famers. I don't know if it was because of the shortness of the speech or because how poignant it was. Rick, you were there, so why don't you? What did you feel after Haley's speech?
Yeah, I think it personified Charles Haley, his career, and the man 100%. The speech. Yeah, I'll tell you this story. I hate to keep going back to it, but going back to yesterday when we met with him, when we had some media availability. About 20 minutes in, it was set to last an hour. About 20 minutes in, and I won't curse on your show, we're standing there. We're in the middle of a conversation. He wipes off his brow. You can find this on our site, too. He wipes off his brow, says, "This S is done," and got up and walked out. He was just done. That's who he was. He was done talking. We talked a lot about him today on our show. And you talk about those 5 Super Bowls where his greatness came in, and I think this is where other players and fans can appreciate it. He always seemed to be that last piece. That last piece for Dallas got them those 3 Super Bowls. He was the last piece in San Francisco that put that defense over the top. He was just that guy. He's an amazing character. You saw that in the Jerry Jones impression he gave tonight. That's got to be trending on Twitter right now. This is just who this guy is. He is who he is, and I think that's what leads to the ovation he got.
Now, Montel, being that you scout, for NGSC Sports in the draft and everything like that, how many players that you watch try to tailor their game a la Charles Haley? Montel, you there?
Oh, I'm sorry. My phone was on mute, didn't realize it. But no, there's a few. There's guys out here like Randy Gregory, Alden Smith. These are guys who have been dominant off the edge, set the edge against the run, rushed the pass very well, and that's something that we remember Haley for. There's a very, very expensive market for a guy who can be a run and chase linebacker, as well as support against the run, come off the edge. We live in the era of the edge rusher, so guys like Charles Haley can make a lot of money in NFL careers, even as a rookie, and there'll be more players that pattern their style after him. I wouldn't be too surprised if a guy like a Kamoko Toure, he's currently a redshirt sophomore out of Rutgers, reminded a lot of people of him. He's another guy. He needs to develop a little bit more, obviously, but he's an incredible pass rusher, had 7 sacks as a rotational player last year, and that's another type of guy who kind of fits that mold, and he's about 6'5", 240-ish, so definitely similar body type.
Now, Rick, before I let you go, because I know you got to get back to Briggsy and get ready to get out of there when the rush is over. Is there any other speech that you listened to tonight that pretty much hit home? For me, it was Tim Brown, because Tim Brown, when Tim Brown spoke, he spoke more about, he gave to practically everybody that he played with. And he asked everybody that was there for him to stand up and take a bow to show his appreciation as well as humility for, the people that got him through his career.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what I would say. Tim Brown, he just nailed it. There's a refreshing honesty about Tim Brown. And I think if you look back on his career, it wasn't always pretty at times. You could see that in talking to him one-on-one. You could hear it in the speech. but he gave credit where it was due. I think he's just a man. I mean, I can't think of a better way to describe him. I know he said yesterday this is probably the most pointed thing you saw anybody say about Junior Seau this weekend as we celebrated him. A very honest thing Tim Brown said yesterday was that, I believe the quote was, "I have a hard time not being upset with Junior." And he went on to talk about what Junior left behind and how Tim Brown, Marcus Allen, any one of these guys that were friends with him, one phone call, they could have been there and helped him out. So there's just something so honest and so refreshing when Tim Brown talks that the speed extension of everything he said this weekend, and I truly enjoyed it.
Well, Rick, I want to say thanks for having it, for coming on and from Canton and talking to us about the Hall of Fame ceremony. Why don't you let the good people know where they can find you and tell them about the show.
All right, definitely. Thanks for having me on, Nick. It was a great time as always. You can check us out at AsylumFantasySports.com. We've got updates, sound bites, pictures, everything you need to know from Canton, plus all the shows from our network, from the Asylum Sports Show to Nick. Your show goes on Sunday nights, hopefully most of the time. If not on Monday, we've got the Fantasy Football Consistency Show, Fantasy Sports Rants. You can check all that out. You can follow us on Twitter at Asylum Football for up-to-the-minute updates on Hall of Fame weekend.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Rick, and we'll hope you enjoyed camp.
I will. Thanks for having me on, Nick.
No problem. That was Rick Flieger from Asylum Football calling live from Canton, Ohio at the Pro Football Hall of Fame ceremony. Now we're going to talk a little bit about training camp because last week, Mr. Hardy over here was at Bears training camp. And I got to say, Montel, that, was following you on Twitter, on Facebook, and everything like that, and you were giving some really good updates on what was going on in Bears camp. What's the mood right now? Because after last year's dumpster fire, the only place the Chicago Bears can go is up. So what's the mood right now, and is there anything in particular that you saw that you liked and anything that you saw that you didn't like?
Well, this year the mood is going to be it's very positive and it's very strong and tough. This year's Chicago Bears team will be watchable because they will not quit on this staff, and they're just going to be so tough. There are some things that go on in training camp, and you can see the coaches working with the players, and it's just so much more aggressive. You'll see some guys getting caught up together in fights, and it's just little things like that where you can tell that the identity of this team is going to be extremely tough. I know that when they started doing some of the more contact scrimmage drills, they moved the media pretty far away from it. And part of it was because the coaches wanted to just light into these players whenever they saw something wrong, whenever they thought that they weren't given a complete 100%. And they didn't want us to hear about it. But I tell you what, we caught, just a few sound bites, a small earful, and it's just nothing you'd want your mother to hear. That's what I would say. But as a whole, it's a tough camp, and I think that the mentality is changing. Just as I tweeted that day, is the whole time I was in camp, I was thinking about the quote from the Bears, McCaskey, the chairman of the Bears, and he said that when players and when teams face Chicago, he wants them to know they've been through hell, and that's literally all I could think of during practice, especially towards the end of it, because it just seemed to be so true. As far as the bad, there are some players that didn't look so great. Jonathan Bostic might have a rough going around in his defense. Also, it looked like, Shane Carden. I know there's a whole lot of drama about Jay Cutler, but in theory there shouldn't be because there's simply not another quarterback who can play his level, however high or low people perceive it to be. Clausen didn't seem to really get a grasp of the playbook and feel comfortable with himself. And it just kind of appeared to me that Shane Carden is just out of his element, at least taking first or second team reps. Really struggling mechanically. So I would say those were some of the low lights of camp.
Now, as everybody knows, Brandon Marshall left after the season. He left to the New York Jets.
Yep.
A lot of people say that leaves a gaping hole for Jay Cutler because Alshon Jeffrey, we don't know if he can actually be a true number one receiver, but it seems to me that Eddie Royal has been getting a lot of good pub, with his route running, his leadership, and everything like that. Is that someone that Jay Cutler really needs? Because it seems to me that no matter what he does, there always seems to be some sort of drama behind the scenes. I personally think that losing Brandon Marshall could be addition by subtraction. So I wanted to get your thoughts on it. And do you think Alshon Jeffrey's ready to make the move to be that true number one wide receiver? Because a lot of people expected him to be last year what he was a couple of years ago when he was lighting the world on fire. Last year, he had a couple of knocks, and the production really wasn't there. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great observation. Marshall did some things, I think, behind the scenes that might have been taken too lightly. He's part of the reason why Alshon is as good as he is. He's also part of the reason that we've seen so much growth in Marquise Wilson, who's the third-year man at wide receiver. What I will say is, first off, this is a deep receiving corps. Last year there was a time where if Marshall and Jeffrey couldn't play, there was really no one. This year, if something happens to number one, number two guys, say Jeffrey and Royal go down, I'm a big believer in who they've got in Marquise Wilson. I think he's going to be good. And just as I told everyone, right now, especially because he hasn't really gotten a chance to play, Kevin White is probably the fourth receiver on that depth chart. So you've got those two, and I believe a guy like a Levi Norwood will make the roster and be very solid. So at receiver, they're deep. The fact that they moved Marshall and were able to develop guys like Wilson and get a guy like Royal in is critical. Royal is great. He's a leadership guy. He's worked with Cutler after practice. He's worked with White a little bit. And he's still a great athlete. He's still fast. He can make the sharp cuts. And he's he's a little bit stronger than people give him credit for. And I think that's important to mention as well. Overall, I think that he's a very good asset, and I just think this team in general will be solid in the passing game. But one thing's for sure is that it's not necessarily about Cutler anymore. It's just more like giving guys the pieces to succeed and really closely evaluating how good he can be. One final thing, Alshon Jeffrey is definitely ready to be the number one guy. This is a contract year for him, and from the second he started training camp, you can tell. When I was at camp, he beat Kyle Fuller like a drum. I don't know if it was – I didn't know whether to feel thrilled for Alshon that he's playing so well or whether Fuller was struggling and I should feel depressed. But he's been matched up and he's owned every corner in camp. He's spent time with other receivers, helping getting them adjusted to the game and what they're looking for. And right now, Alshon Jeffrey looks too par of a number one wide receiver, and I'd expect that play from him.
Now, let's go to the defensive side, and as everybody knows, last year, that was like the complete, I said it before, I'll say it again, the complete dumpster fire that was Mel Tucker. And, secondary completely banged up, linebackers were like all over the place, no push from up front. It always seemed that as soon as someone punched them in the mouth, they mailed it in. What did you see in camp, the first few days in camp from the defensive side? Is it still going to be a struggle, or do you see this being an improvement this year? Because it really can't be as bad as it was last year.
It just can't, because I think, like I said before, everyone feels optimistic in training camp, but like I said before, there's a certain toughness that I think has returned to this team, and it's just so strong that it's overwhelming, and most journalists, I think it hits you maybe after a couple hours just what you're seeing. But, we've seen instances where, Kyle Long will come off the, line of scrimmage and just light right into a defensive tackle or an end, and an end will get down, and then you'll see another defensive player get in Kyle Long's face, like, hey, that's my guy, we're tough, we're gonna finish this play. And Kyle Long's like, I'm not having it, But generally what you're seeing here is you're seeing two sides go at it from day one. They're trying to breed toughness, and that's the thing I think they really needed. last year in the Tucker Treshman era, we saw teams quit, just like you said, as soon as they were punched in the mouth. I think part of that was that they didn't have faith in the system. And I think the second thing was that there was a certain amount of pride and dignity they didn't have being as bad as they were and not seeing a change week to week. So I think simply being in a new defense, getting some pieces that have been known as tough, and then finally getting coaches that will accept nothing less. I mean, I can't stress enough, but when you get a chance, research what Vic Fangio has done with defenses his first year there. He's redefined their culture. And he's also the only man I know that can wear a sweatshirt in 90-degree weather. So with that said, I think you're going to see a different Bears defense. And they're set up differently, too. You know, you got the 3-4 scheme. You have Allen rotating in and out during, sub packages. And then you also have Pernell McPhee, who is easily the best athlete that I think the Bears have had, at least since Urlacher's left. That blend of speed, lateral agility, power, it's really special.
Now, last question before we let you go. The Chicago Bears draft this year. Is there anybody from this draft class that you think will make an impact right off the bat, and if so, in what way?
That's a great question. I think you're going to see two guys eventually work their way in and do some great things. I think the first guy is Eddie Goldman. I think the way this defense is structured, he'll have to start. And you can see in camp he's getting a lot of reps, and he's got to get his stamina up. Because I think he's starting to realize how much he's going to be on the field, how much the team is going to need him to play that true nose position. It's obviously the zero tech, as some people call it, or the nose guard. So he's got to play that position, and he's got to keep his breath so that way he can play the long snaps and go deep into the fourth. So I think he has a tremendous impact if this defense is going to be strong up front. I think another guy who's going to have a very strong year potentially for the Bears is going to be, I think it might be Jeremy Langford. And I'll say this. With the addition they have with him, Forte's already there, and then the fact that they have Jaquiz Rogers, Kadeem Carey could very well be cut at the end of training camp. Norris Perry has special teams value, or else I'd say he'd be cut too. Fox has historically used committees of running backs, or at least tandems, and he, to me, is the second man off the bench as long as he learns the playbook, and they obviously, as long as he learns the playbook and continues to stay healthy. So they'll have the most immediate impact. I think guys like Haranis Kersu will get in there, but because he's a center and there's just so many things and intricacies he'll be responsible for, it may take him some time. I would not be shocked if he was a starter maybe week 7, week 8. And then finally, Adrian Amos, who I think is an incredible athlete and better safety, he just won't quite get to play simply because I think Brock Purdy is going to take his game to a new level, and I think between Mundy and what they have and the new guy Antrell Rolle, even though he's a little older, he'll fight for playing time, but I don't think he'll really get in other than on a rotational basis. But I think with a year to learn under this defense, this is a guy who next year we could be looking at and be like, wow, what a great player this team has.
Well, Montel, I got to say, this was a great conversation tonight, man. Very glad to have you in the lab. Why don't you let the good people know where they can find you on social media and tell them all about NGSC Sports?
Sure, Nick. It's a pleasure to be on the show. Thanks again for having me, and congratulations for all you've accomplished here on the Mad Scientist Sports Show. You can find me on Twitter at Montel, Montel, capital NFL. And, as always, you can find all my work at ngscsports.com. We'll get rolling on some draft stuff very soon.
Yeah, I know. I'm looking forward to seeing your NFL draft stuff. I know the amount of work that you guys put in last year for the 2015 draft. I have no doubt that you'll be putting in the work again for 2016. Definitely look out for this guy, ladies and gentlemen. He's a real good dude and knows his football very well. Definitely have you on in the not-too-distant future, so have a good one, okay?
You too. Thank you.
Hey, no problem. Have a good one. That was Montel Hardy, ladies and gentlemen, from NGSC Sports. We're about to get done with the first half of our show, but before we have our next guest come on, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a rant here. Earlier this week, San Francisco 49er defensive end Aldon Smith was arrested due to reckless driving, having drugs, alcohol, whatever you name in the system. And the 49ers had no choice but to cut him. Now, this is a guy who has all the talent in the world and has decided to throw it away. A lot of people are saying, don't blame the 49ers, don't blame this, don't blame that, blame this guy because, he's stupid, he's idiotic, he's whatever, he's throwing everything away, no team is going to touch him, yada, yada. Look, the fact of the matter is this. Aldon Smith has a problem. Aldon Smith needs help. It's pretty obvious that the 9-game suspension he suffered last year did not register with him. It's happened again. And people saying, how many times can someone get a chance before he kills somebody? What Aldon Smith needs to do is to seek help. And when I mean seek help, I mean go into rehab, stay in rehab for as long as possibly you can, get yourself back in order, and if a team decides to take a chance on you, fine. But man, when you have the talent that Aldon Smith has, and you see what ends up happening, it's not the first time that this has happened in the NFL, not the first time this has happened in sports. We live in a day and age where players have to be coddled, they feel that they need a sense of entitlement, what have you. Till someone shows someone like Aldon Smith some tough love, this is going to continuously happen. And one day, something really, really bad is going to happen. And everybody's going to be up in an uproar. But everybody's going to say, well, why didn't anybody try to do anything for the poor guy? Sometimes I have to wonder, do owners and coaches and agents really care? I don't know. But for the sake of Aldon Smith, get this boy some help, because if not, it's going to be a big issue down the road. Ladies and gentlemen, we're about to go into the second half of our show. Joining us right now, the owner of Sports for Fans, the host of some pretty dang good podcasts, if I may say so myself, and one of the guys that had the guts to decide to syndicate the Mad Scientist Sports Lab on his network. He's here to talk some MMA with us tonight. I've been a guest on his show. He's never been a guest on mine until tonight, ladies and gentlemen. First time stepping into the Sports Lab. Ladies and gentlemen, Sean Stewart. Sean, how you doing tonight? Sean, you there? Sean, you there? Okay, we seem to be having some technical difficulty with Sean right now. Sean, if you're listening, call back in. We definitely would like to have you on and everything, so whenever you get a chance, please call back in. Sean is going to be talking about some MMA tonight. Obviously, we're going to be talking about the great Ronda Rousey. We're going to be talking about Jose Aldo versus Conor McGregor, the match the fight that should happen. Just don't know if Aldo is either A, going to get hurt again, or B, he's going to back out for some sort of injury or what have you. But I will say that, we might also talk about The Ultimate Fighter, a couple of things. Now, I'm going to admit, I am not an MMA guy at all. I mean, I like it, I don't mind watching it, but I don't follow it like a religion. So, I can give people some, aspect of what I think may happen or talk about it as a fan. But as an analyst, no. I wouldn't even know what a cravat between Kimura or anything like that. I know there's grappling, there's wrestling, jiu-jitsu, everything, judo, everything like that. So, okay, we got Sean back on the line. How you doing?
How you doing so far? Sorry about that. My Skype must have been muted.
Oh, okay. Well, it seems muting is a little bit of an issue tonight. But first thing I wanted to talk. Thank you for joining us in the lab. First thing I wanted to talk to you about is Ronda Rousey. Obviously, to start right off the bat, Rousey, has pretty much dominated, MMA since she stepped into the octagon, and her performance this past week just continues the legend. Give me your take on her performance, her past fight.
All right. Thank you so much. Like I said, thank you so much for having me on your show, by the way. All right. Last week, it was the Ronda Rousey fight versus Bev Correa, how to pronounce it. The time of the fight was around, around 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock. So Brazil's they're ahead of us. So for 2 o'clock, it'd be 1 o'clock. So it was probably around 2 or 3 o'clock at that time. And I thought that the fight was going to last more than one round. So when I actually watched the fight live, I'm saying, is Ronda Rousey going to be here in round 1 and round 2? Because I knew she was going to win, but the question was how long was the round? So when I saw Ronda Rousey beating Bev Correa, I was like, wow, she beat her in one round, and you shouldn't have heard the crowd in Brazil. And you know how the people in Brazil, they love to cheer the the fighters that are in Brazil and not anybody else. So everybody in Brazil was just quiet when Ronda Rousey won. So I'm not surprised about Ronda Rousey about winning this fight. Again, like I said, I congratulate her. I've been watching her since December of 2013 when she defeated Miesha Tate. So far, she has been incredible, and I also said she should win the ESPYs Award of the Year, and she well deserved it.
Now, obviously, the fight that everybody wants to see when it comes to Ronda Rousey right now is with Cyborg. There has been clamoring that now the fight may take place in April of 2016. Cyborg is willing to come down to 135 to make this fight happen. And if this fight were to happen, there is talk that this may be the highest grossing pay-per-view MMA fight ever since they started. If there were a Rousey versus Cyborg fight in the octagon, do you think that we may see an upset, even if you can call it upset, because Cyborg, has a very, very heavy reputation in the octagon. But, being we've seen how dominant Rousey has been, would you give Cyborg a chance? Do you think this will be a great fight, or do you think people are going to be set up for another 30-second knockout / submission?
I'll actually give this a shot. From the rumors I've heard, according to UFC, they said the fight hasn't been official yet, and it was one of the UFC fighters, the former UFC fighters, said it did happen, but according to UFC, it did not happen. But I'll just say this. Will it be like a million pay-per-view buys? There's no question about that, because we have not seen Cyborg has ever faced in a UFC fight, but she is Invicta, and for a bantamweight you have to be 135 pounds, so that's why she has to do that in order for her to be that same class as Ronda Rousey. So could we possibly see an upset? I really don't want to say that, because she hasn't fight anyone in the UFC yet as of right now. So let's just back off of this. Could we see a possibly upset? And I've been hearing that they may have the fight in Cowboy Stadium, at AT&T Stadium in Dallas. So we don't really kind of know if it's in Dallas or Las Vegas.
Now, if this fight were to take place in Dallas, it obviously would be taking place in Jerry World, and I think it might actually fill the stadium. You might actually see 100,000+ fill that stadium just for around the Rousey fight. Now, they may also pair it up with Conor McGregor versus Jose Aldo. They may pair it up with another major fight, with some of their stars. Who knows? You could see the comeback of John Bones Jones or something. But if Ronda Rousey and Chris Cyborg were to be the headliner, I think 100,000 fans would show up just to watch them go at it. What do you think?
Well, for a state that doesn't have state taxes, of course you're going to go for it. Like I said, me and you and I would like to see that fight, and it should have like a title fight, like a Jose Aldo or Conor McGregor, which was supposed to happen in July the 11th, which didn't happen, but it is what it is. But I got to watch and see the fight. So if you want to have the fight either in Las Vegas or have like a Ronda Rousey and Cyborg, you got to have something with it for like a title fight. You can't just have Ronda Rousey and Cyborg. So if I'm UFC, I want to have another title fight on that card as well.
Speaking of McGregor versus Aldo, you actually said you hit it on the head. The fight was supposed to happen in July, and Aldo got injured, had to pull out of the fight. McGregor fought for the interim belt, won by knockout. But this is not the first time that Jose Aldo has backed out of a major fight in the UFC, and you can tell by Dana White's reaction that he obviously was not pleased. He was PO'd beyond belief. This fight is going to happen. I mean, the build-up to the fight was amazing. These two guys do not like each other at all. I mean, it was palpable from day one they don't like each other at all. If this fight were to happen, what do you think's gonna happen? Do you think McGregor by knockout, or do you think Aldo is actually will pull off the victory? Because a lot of people really don't know about Jose Aldo as much as they do know about Conor McGregor. But Aldo is when he's in the octagon, few and far between, of course. He's one tough SOB.
Yes, you're talking about McGregor, right?
Well, first I was talking about Aldo.
Okay, I was like, what the heck are you talking about? Okay, yeah. Like you said, a lot of people don't know who Jose Aldo is, so if you're like UFC, you kind of heard about Jose Aldo, but like a lot of people knew who Conor McGregor was, because when people think of Conor McGregor, they think of him in that press conference between him and Jose Aldo. So, do I think it's an upset? It's going to be a coin flip. It's going to be a toss. It's going to be a toss of one. And like you said, this is not the first time Jose Aldo back off the fight. It's not once, not twice, but plenty of times. So it's going to be so hard, because Conor McGregor, I actually pulled off Conor McGregor to win that fight on UFC and on July the 11th. So right now my mind is so bogged right now. Like you said, the fight is going to happen sooner or later. It's not going to be like a year or two, something like that, like boxing does, of course. But the fight's going to happen. I see the fight's going to last it's September, so it's August, so I say the fight will probably happen around 6 to 9 months. We can see that in the span 6 to 9 months to happen, because this fight is eventually going to happen. But the question is, where are they going to put the fight at so that the place can be all packed up? So all I can see right now is the MGM Grand Arena, because they're going to have another stadium that's going to be building, which is owned by MGM, or at Jerry's World. So if I was UFC and had that title fight between Ronda Rousey and Cyborg, like we just talked about earlier, I would like to have it at AT&T Stadium, where Jerry's World. So I could see it in 6 to 9 months and seeing the fight. So we probably could see that fight in Jerry's World.
Okay, now let's move on now to the Ultimate Fighter series that's been around for quite some time, and we've seen some doozies in the past. A lot of people are saying now it's getting stale. It's no longer the top, the ratings get that it was when it first started. We've seen some great fighters come out of the Ultimate Fighter. We've seen some great matches. Has the Ultimate Fighter lost its luster in the world of MMA? And do you see any way of it, getting back onto what it was like the first few seasons?
You are the first question that asked me about this question on the radio before. I have to be very serious about this. UFC, like when I first started watching UFC in 2011, I thought UFC was the new thing. But like as years and years went by, it's kind of slid down. It's not like it used to be. But if I'm UFC right now, I would like to limit like all the fights, because I know like UFC, they air the fights every week. It's like not everybody can keep up with the UFC fights. So like this, if I'm UFC, I will at least have like fights have 2 or 3 fights every month, not every week, like at least have 2 fights, and then 1 week you can have a pay-per-view fight just like Bellator is doing, because Bellator right now, they're doing it monthly, maybe 1 or 2 fights. So do it like Bellator does, and that way you can have the fighters get prepared for the next fight. Because right now, UFC right now is not like it used to be, but it is growing in terms of building fighters, but they have to slow down with this airing these MMA fights every week. So if I'm Dana White, I got to say, you know what, we got to do something to get these fans back. So in order for them to do that, they have to limit we have to air these fights every week. So do like Bellator does, have it like 2 fights, and then the other one have like a pay-per-view fight every month or something like that.
Okay, but the question was about the Ultimate Fighter series that was on Spike TV.
Oh.
What I was asking was, I remember, season 1 through seasons 4, you saw fighters on there that, turned out to be, really good in the UFC, like Josh Kosaczek, Forrest Griffin, Stephan Bonner, Kenny Florian. The coaches were like UFC legends in like Ken Shamrock, Tito Ortiz, Matt Hughes, GSP, Randy Couture, Chuck Liddell. But now it seems it seems to me that the Ultimate Fighter series itself has gone stale. My question to you was, what do you think the UFC has to do to bring the Ultimate Fighter series, back to what it once was? Or do you just feel that maybe we could say nature has taken its course and maybe it's time to go in a different direction?
Okay, now I see what you're getting. The TV series. Now I'm seeing because I'm hearing the wind because it's kind of loud outside. All right. I actually did watch a little bit of the Ultimate Fighter, the Brazilians and top team, and because of the NBA Finals and the NHL playoffs, I kind of it was hard for me to keep up. And for example, let's say they air a new season in March, right? Like March Madness. It's a lot of people won't watch it around that time, so they either may watch it on their on demand or DVR it. So right now, if I'm UFC like this, if we don't even improve, we just might as well cancel the series, because like you said, there are some great fighters who actually came out of the Ultimate Fighter, but if the Ultimate Fighter does not work, because there's going to be an upcoming new season this around September, which I'm watching because Conor McGregor is going to be in it, then it's kind of like saying we got to pull the plug right here.
Okay. Oh, what do you call it? Fair enough with that. Now, moving into we're going into 2016. We have some more mega fights that are going to be coming our way. Are there any we're waiting to see what John Bones Jones is going to be doing, because we were talking once about the best pound for pound fighter in MMA, and the situation that arose with him, you know, obviously with him, like, taking a leave of absence or being suspended, depending on who you talk to, you know, 2016, we may see him come back. Obviously, a lot of people are going to be clamoring for the rematch for the light heavyweight title because he wasn't being hurt in the ring. So, what are your thoughts on John Bones Jones? Do you think he's coming back in 2016? And if so, how soon do you think it will be before we see him in a title fight?
Okay, now you're the second person to ask that question about John Jones, because I was the first person to say that UFC would strip him from his belt, which happened when he got arrested in New Mexico, and he has changed his life. Now, if he does come back in the UFC, like I said, it's a coin flip, but I want him to come back to to get his title back against Daniel Cormier, and of course, that will more likely will even sell out, especially the pay-per-view buys, because John Jones was actually supposed to fight in UFC 187 against Anthony Rumble Johnson, in which Daniel Cormier took John Jones' spot. So I don't have a problem with John Jones coming back in the UFC. We could possibly see him in 2016, depending on what his status is. He can get better or not. So, because, you know, John Jones has been in trouble in a couple of times, you know what I mean? Like, he got arrested for getting caught with using cocaine, my bad. And then the infamous incident where he got caught with the hit and run, and he almost got injured a pregnant woman and an unborn child, which I really do not. So if John Jones do come back, more likely he'll face against Daniel Cormier in a light heavyweight, and I will watch it. So it wouldn't be surprising if John Jones wins this fight. So if John Jones wins this fight, this is going to be one happy story for him. But I'm hoping he can get his act together before he comes back to the octagon.
All right, and last question before we have you go, and that's this. Is there any fighter out there right now in the UFC that we need to be on the lookout for in 2016 and beyond that might be the next big thing? I mean, we all know about Conor McGregor. We all know about Ronda Rousey. You know, Conor McGregor may be that next big thing, especially if the Aldo fight happens and he wins. But is there anybody else that anybody should be on the lookout for?
To be honest with you, I really don't know who's going to be that upcoming fighter, because, like I said, we kind of have to wait to see what happens, because, like, I could see, like, Holly Holm, which she's right now, she's 2-0, but, like, she has not a good performance, even though she's 2-0. So we could possibly see her upcoming in the UFC, because her first fight was in UFC 184. But right now, I can see the women like Holly Holm, and then, like I said, let's just wait and see what happens in a couple of months to see who's who in these upcoming UFC cards. So I'll probably give until around November. I could possibly see John Dodson as he faces against Demetrius Johnson in UFC 191, which is not too long ago, and that fight will be on September the 5th. So we could possibly see an upset in UFC 191 against Demetrius Johnson. And again, this is a rematch for the UFC flyweight. So be on the lookout for John Dodson when he beats Demetrius Johnson on September 5th. So it wouldn't surprise me.
Well, Sean, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight on the Mad Scientist Sports Lab. Why don't you let the people know about your network, Sports for Fans, and the shows that you have?
All right. People can find me on Twitter at Sports for Stewart. That is SPORTS, 4 as number 4, STDWART. You can follow Sport for Fans, just like Sport for Fans. And you can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Google+. And you can check out our website at sportforfans.com. Please do not put www, just put sportforfans.com. We also have an Instagram page, and we're also going to broadcast some Madden video games in September. So please give us a patient And we're also going to broadcast the Midwest Basketball League in April of 2016. So we're looking to air more live events. And also, I will be back on the air on August the 25th, the day of Madden 16 comes out. So please follow me in social media.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Sean. Have a good night, okay?
Thank you so much. Take care. You too.
And that was Sean Stewart from Sports for Fans. Great time talking some MMA. But now, ladies and gentlemen, it's the main event of the evening because obviously I have to save my best guest for last. And what better man to come on the show than the incomparable, the venerable basketball mind himself. One of the first guys that got me going in this business when I used to crash his show on the old Op Nation network. And I got to tell you, having him on the show is always an honor and a pleasure, and his basketball prowess is second to none. He's formerly of Basketball Insiders. Now he is part of Lakers Nation, a high honor for a Lakers fan. Ladies and gentlemen, I give you the one and only Jabari Davis.
Nick, as usual, you are far too kind, but I'll go ahead and slide that 50 into the mail for you. I appreciate it.
Well, Jabari, I mean, what do you call it? It's the truth when it comes to you. But why don't you let the people know what you thought about the 2014-15 season, which obviously was not a highlight for the Los Angeles Lakers, and tell them about the summer season.
Well, I mean, wait, are you asking what I thought about it for the Lakers or the season in general? Because, like, as you said, it's certainly we don't want people turning their radios off or turning the internet off already, leading in.
Well, obviously would have to be about the Lakers since you happen to have the pulse on that franchise. So.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay, well, from the Lakers' perspective, this was just a holding. 2014-15 was a holding season. With Kobe still on the books, and obviously oft injured at this point in his career. Obviously, I mean, no disrespect to one of the all-time greats, but the reality is what it is. And with Julius Randle going down in that very first, night of action, I was actually there in the building, and I can tell you literally could have heard a pin drop in that building when that took place. It was kind of a throwaway season. I hate to say it, but ultimately it ended up working out to their benefit because they got a high draft pick. Obviously, they ended up with the number 2 pick in D'Angelo Russell. All types of excitement about him, all around the city and obviously, like elsewhere as well. And really, it would have been entirely been a throwaway season had it not been for the second half that Jordan Clarkson put together. Now, I'll admit, a lot of people, and myself included, after the season said, hey, okay, look, he was great for a bad team. Is it a matter, is it a matter of him just putting up numbers because somebody's got to put up numbers? Or is this guy, could this guy be the truth? And my honest gut instinct is, at least right now, from what I saw from him in Summer League and what I've seen from some of the workout footage, is Jordan Clarkson might be the best of, right now at 23, might be the best of all those young, all of that young talent that the Lakers have, have kind of put together. So the summer, moving forward into the summer, I thought they did a fantastic job. I know a lot of folks are like, oh, they didn't get LaMarcus Aldridge. My question, and this is something that's been, we beat this dead horse, many times over. But my question to anybody that, that really or legitimately thought that LaMarcus Aldridge or one of those top, big name free agents was going to come is why would they? Not that the Lakers don't have anything for their future, but, these are guys that are 30 years old that are looking to win right now. And even though Lakers fans should be happy and looking forward to what's going to take place over the next couple of seasons, if you're LaMarcus Aldridge or if you're DeAndre Jordan, if you're one of those guys that, you're approaching 30 or you're right around there, and you have the opportunity to join another team, for the same amount of money that also has a possibility of at least competing for a title, it's a simple choice.
Now, speaking of DeAndre Jordan, I spoke about this at length a few weeks ago, but I wanted to get your take on the saga known as DeAndre Jordan Swerve. because, as everybody, because that's exactly what I called it 3 weeks ago. I called it a swerve. I mean, it just made him look mentally weak, and, it put Dallas in such a bind that I personally still do not think that they will ever recover from this walkaway.
Well, I don't know that it's going to go on forever, but I will say this: it definitely put Dallas behind the 8 ball because, look, my honest opinion about what he did was he made the right decision. He just did it in the wrong way. Like, you mentioned him looking mentally weak. I kind of hated the fact that, at least according to reports, he wouldn't pick up the phone and not only, give them a call, but he wouldn't even take a call, from Dallas. That kind of was, for lack of a better way of saying it, chicken bleep. You know what I mean? But in terms of the actual decision, it was the right call. If you're DeAndre Jordan, I know that Dallas, they blew in the ear. They said, ooh, you're our Shaq and all of that, and that might have sounded good. But the reality is, he's not. He wouldn't have been. He would have done. He would have provided exactly what he does, which is rebound, block shots, and protect the rim. And he's excellent at that. So I in no way do I want to diminish what he actually can do. But in terms of all of that, hyperbolic speak about, he's can be the next Shaq or he's our Shaq. All of that stuff was silly. I understand he wants to be. He wanted to be the focal point. But what I honestly think took place is, after he had a chance to sit back and think about it, he probably realized, you know what, I'm really not about that. Maybe he's a confident guy, maybe he's not, but I think we can all be honest about it and say DeAndre Jordan is not a first option, year in, year out. He's not that guy. It's just that simple.
Yeah, I mean, I get that and everything like that. The problem that I have with the whole thing, though, is this. This was really your first foray into free agency, and I totally get that. Mm-hmm. And you were blown away by what Mark Cuban had to say. You were blown away by what Chandler Parsons had to say. You were blown away because you were going to be playing with the great Dirk Nowitzki, which is probably, and Nowitzki was willing to take a step back and say, now this is your team, I'm just following along for the ride type of deal. So, Wesley Matthews, will be coming back from the injury and will be another good piece to the cog. The pieces were going to be there. And they were willing to sign you for the max contract that was allowed at the time. And you said, you said yes. But then you allow, you got, to me, it was a case of stage fright. It was a case that, I don't want to leave my comfort zone knowing that I have Blake Griffin and Chris Paul backing me up on what I want to do, and pretty much after that, if I were to fail in Dallas, everybody would think I'm a failure. Whereas if I fail in Los Angeles, the blame wouldn't be on me. It would be on Doc. It would be on Paul. It would be on Griffin. It would be on someone like that. It's just, to me it was just unbelievable.
You're exactly right, and I'm being honest. I really do. I genuinely believe, and of course, this is totally my opinion. This is not based on any report. I genuinely believe that line of thought at least had to creep into his mind. He had to have at least considered that. Hello? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, no, I was just saying, like I said, it's not based on any report or anything of that nature, but common sense, common sense of it makes you think he at least had to consider that, the difference between having to be the man on a nightly basis and just, and the Clippers, where they're just happy when he can contribute anything on the offensive end, and for the same money, with his buddy Blake Griffin. Like I said, it's a no-brainer. It's just unfortunate for the Mavericks that it went down that way. Because, it is. They got shafted.
Now, another thing that I had to, about free agency, which blew my mind away, and was obviously the San Antonio Spurs. I mean, Greg I loved when Greg Popovich, when they asked the question, what are you doing for what are you doing at 12 o'clock during free agency? I'm sleeping. If they don't want to come here, I don't want to be here. It was Popovich at his best. And then, you wondered what they were going to do and everything. And, of course, they re-signed Kawhi Leonard, which everybody knew what was going to happen anyway. And then all of a sudden it came out that they got LaMarcus Aldridge. And I sat there and I was like, what? And then about 2 hours later, David West opted out of $12 million to sign for the veteran minimum to go play for the Spurs. I'm like, okay. Can we just hand the title to them now? But let's be honest. Obviously, that's got to be done on the court. But from Popovich to R.C. Buford to the ownership to whomever, you are witnessing why the Spurs are like the Rolls-Royce of NBA franchises. It's like a team that can do no wrong. Whether it's re-signing their own, whether it's bringing in another star in Aldridge, another good cog in David West. Oh yeah, I forgot they re-signed Danny Green as well.
Danny Green.
Forgetting about that. I mean, it just seems to me that people want to play for the Spurs because they play basketball the right way. Whether it be it's because of Tim Duncan, Ginobili, Parker, whoever it may be, that's their version of the Big Three, but this is a team game. And then during the Summer League, watching Becky Hammond be the head coach of the Summer League and winning the Summer League, just makes that franchise look that much better.
Look, none whatsoever. I was just going to say, there's nothing that you said that I can possibly disagree with. The reality is, look, and I don't want to go too far because not everybody, just like out here in Los Angeles, not everybody can play with Kobe Bryant. Not everybody is going to sign up for that. Not everybody can fit in with the Spurs. But those that know the game, those that are kind of beyond like a lot of the hoopla or don't necessarily gravitate towards that, they definitely want to be a member of the Spurs. It did not shock me at all about LaMarcus Aldridge. And it's funny because if you ask Jameson, he'll tell you. I called that, and look, I'm not, I called this, but I did talk about this back in January where, during the season, even after obviously when he was still playing for Portland, even after he hurt his thumb and it looked like, that probably means he's going back. Part of me always felt like it was going to be the Spurs. It's just a natural fit, and it just works perfectly. In terms, we could sit here all night, complimenting the Spurs as an organization, top to bottom, inside and out. But the truth of the matter is, it didn't happen overnight. They've been putting this, they've been developing this system and remastering it and getting everything down pat over the last, I'd say 15 to 20 years. And this is truly a testament to not only having the right individuals, running the organization, but being able to acknowledge and find the right talent, not always the most, like the guy that jumps out of the gym or the right talent to fit their system, the right personality, the player with the proper disposition. They have hit a home run across the board. And you know what? Regardless of whether they are your team, and clearly I don't work for the Spurs. I don't work for Spurs Nation. But the reality is, regardless of whether they're your team, they are a top-notch organization. You have to show them respect.
Now, then after that, you look at like a franchise like Portland, and you lose 4/5 of your starting rotation, and it seems like you're getting shunned left and right by every free agent, whether it be internal or external. And this is a team that for the last 5 years, they averaged around like 45, 50 wins a year. Always gave somebody a fit during the playoffs. Now you pretty much got Damian Lillard, and but what else is there? What happened this offseason that caused such a mass exodus? It's not like they were cap crunched or anything like that.
You know, I was very intrigued by that. I like I said, I thought LaMarcus was always leaving, so I wasn't shocked by that. But for them to essentially press the virtual reset button, and as you mentioned it, not only did they lose 4/5 of their starting five, they also lost their sixth man in Aaron Aflalo. You know what I mean? Like they had a total roster change, a total roster remake. Now it could be that they determined, hey, look, even with all of these guys, we're kind of stuck in first round or maybe second round purgatory, if you will, and they may as well go ahead and like I said, press the virtual reset button. That could have very well been the case, but it is peculiar. Anytime you see all four of the other starters gone, it makes me wonder what the chemistry was like, going into last year or throughout the year. It really does make me wonder that. It could be nothing, could be something. All I know is, like you mentioned, Damian Lillard's the last man standing.
Now, moving to the Eastern Conference, I mean, it seems to me that, Cleveland did right. LeBron signed his mini deal like everybody thought that it was going to be. But they made the peripheral moves that just made them that much stronger. Is it safe to say that Cleveland is set up for another run to the NBA Finals in the Eastern Conference?
They're definitely set up for it. I mean, we'll see what takes place, how the parts gel kind of around the Eastern Conference. I'm very intrigued to see what Miami looks like and if they can be relatively healthy. I throw relatively in there because look, those guys have shown that they're not necessarily, you can't necessarily count on them to be healthy throughout the entire season. I mean, in sports in general, there's no guarantee of health. Health is of course wealth in sports and all of life. But I'm intrigued to see if they can get 65 plus games out of Boston, 65 plus games out of Wade, and whatever they can get, however Goran Dragic fits, he definitely appears to be comfortable there, so that looks like a positive hit, at least towards the second half of last year after he was acquired. I love the Winslow pickup, absolutely loved it. It'll be intriguing to see whether playing alongside Wade or in replacement of Wade, I'll knock on wood for Heat fans, what that does in terms of, for his progression. Chicago is still going to be a very talented team, but they are starting anew, with Fred Hoiberg bringing in a new system. So we'll see what that team looks like. I'm intrigued by Washington. I'm only going down the list, in order to name a couple other intriguing teams, because ultimately I'm going to come back to, yes, Cleveland on paper looks like the team that should come out of the East. But the one of the teams that I'm going to mention, the Milwaukee Bucks, I'm not just jumping on this bandwagon. I was talking about them last year. I've always kind of liked them. I was very sad to see what took place with Larry Sanders, but it's very clear that they've moved on. They've got a great young core. They added Greg Monroe. They were able to retain Chris Middleton. You got Jabari Parker coming back. Hats off to him on the awesome name. They've got. I really like what Jason Kidd did with them in year one. Now let's see what you got for me in year two. Can they take the next step? Can the Greek Freak, can Giannis take that next step and really become something solid at this level, as opposed to doing it here and there? Another team, Orlando will be intriguing. Detroit will be intriguing. But really, like I said, like you said, leading in before your very long-winded answer, Cleveland on paper looks like that team coming, at least for the East.
What? No love to my Knicks?
Oh, look, actually, it's funny because I stopped going down the list because I was like, well, I'm just going on and on. Look, a lot of people, the Knicks have been a punchline for the last few years, but I'll raise my hand and tell you, I like what they did this offseason. I have no idea whether Porzingis is going to pan out, but from what I've seen, the kid looks good. From what I've seen in a couple years, they got, they may have something really legitimate there. Now, in terms of this coming year, I like, you guys got Aflalo, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so I like the Aflalo pickup. I like the Robin Lopez pickup. His numbers are never going to wow you, but if he's the type of guy that if he's on your team and you see what he does on a night in and night out basis, you're going to appreciate that. Kind of like how Knicks fans, maybe prior to seeing Tyson Chandler, didn't quite know, all the different things that he provides to a team, when healthy. I'm not saying that Robin Lopez is the exact same player as Tyson Chandler, but I'm saying, in that ilk of, guys that are somewhat underrated or underappreciated for what they can actually bring. I like what they did, and I'm hoping that Melo is back and healthy and ready to go. I'm intrigued to see, I'm intrigued to see what they can put together in year 2 for Derek, and obviously, with what Phil has done. I'm not going to predict any title run or anything like that. Let's be realistic here, but I do think that they are significantly improved, and they should be able to compete for a playoff spot, maybe one of the bottom ones in the East, moving forward.
Last question for you tonight, sir, and because I know you're a very busy man, as we all well know, but
no worries.
Anthony Davis getting that mega contract, and we saw this throughout all of free agency. There were a lot of rumbling and grumbling that, a lot of the star players will take 1 or 2 year deals with opt-outs because they know the salary cap is going to explode next year, and the TV contract is going to help that number, go off. And people were going to take these small contracts and everything, and they were going to, wait to get their big money. But then we saw the Anthony Davis deal. We saw all these other deals come in, a lot of max deals.
Mm-hmm.
What was the reason behind it? Because it seems to me that because of doing that, all the bluster coming from the NBA Players Association head about a possible strike or anything like that, players don't seem to be worried about that, because usually you would want to do the short-term thing and then hammer the owners, the following year. But it seemed to me that everybody was playing nice.
I think it's situational. If you're LeBron James, you can do that. You can do you can not only have you made a gargantuan amount of money, you can also bank on yourself. If you're Anthony Davis, although it's pretty accepted consensus that he's going to be that next guy if he's not already, working toward that. But you have to understand, he's 21 years old. He hadn't made his big payday yet. So when I saw that deal from him, it made sense. I looked at it like, okay, a 21-year-old, you offer me $145 million, I'm going to take that. Same thing with Kyrie Irving last year. Now, some of the other guys, they may be able to bank on themselves, but I wasn't shocked. I wasn't shocked at all. What I will be disappointed in is if in 2 years we have a group of owners claiming that they're all broke simply because they could not stop themselves from offering up all these big contracts. That's when I'll have a problem. If we end up with another work stoppage, that's when I'll have an issue with it. But if that doesn't take place, I have no problem whatsoever. Hey, go get paid. Collect those checks.
What are the odds of a work stoppage? I mean, might as well get the cat out of the bag now, because, after all that rhetoric that from the first interview from that new head of the Players Association to some of what the hawkish owners have been saying, seems to me that the rhetoric has been toned down. Seems to me that Adam Silver is willing to work with the Players Association, not like David Stern, who pretty much wanted to throw it down the players' throats, in which we saw strikes, we saw lockouts, we saw everything like that. Seems to me that Adam Silver is willing to take a conciliatory tone.
I agree with you on the difference between Silver and David Stern, at least their public persona. But the one thing I'll say is, since you mentioned Adam Silver's, I saw it as the opposite in terms of not necessarily how he's going to interact, because I do think that he's probably he'll be better in terms of, at least publicly, like his interactions with the Players Association, Players Union. But I only want to point out, about 2 weeks ago now, It was pretty quiet. It didn't make a lot of headlines, but Adam Silver did, at one of his press conferences, he did mention those 10 teams supposedly that lost money, which, for the record, and again, this is just my opinion, I never believed that. I never believed that a team has operated in NBA with all of the money that goes into it, with all of the revenue, with all of the different revenue streams. I don't believe that, but anyhow, it's not. I don't mention that he mentioned that 10 teams. So what? It's kind of like a leverage play. Michelle Roberts, as you mentioned, she came out kind of strong, like when she first took over, and and it definitely, you definitely got the sense that hey, she's going to have the players' backs. But so I guess if you're asking me for a percentage or the chance of it, I think that there's still a significant chance that it does take place. I'm just hoping, as you said, I'm hoping that cooler heads will prevail and that Silver's approach will be different than Stern's, and that they can come to some sort of agreement before that. Because I hate, hey, look, when they're not playing, I got nothing to talk about.
Oh, boy. Well, all I have to say is this. If, after all this, there's another work stoppage in the NBA, I think it'll be the third time within 10 years that there would have been a stoppage, which is pretty much on par with what the NHL has been doing. And I got to say, if there's another work stoppage, I'm going to have to sort of wonder about the fans. Are they willing to go through something like that again, especially that there is some momentum gaining here, with the product that's out there. So, Mari, I just want to say thank you so much for joining us tonight. As always, great stuff with you when it comes to the NBA. Let the good people out there know where they can find you on social media and tell them all about Lakers Nation.
Well, Nick, again, allow me to thank you. I always appreciate the invitation. I'm sorry that I haven't been, quite as available as, in years past, but hopefully we can rectify that moving forward. But again, thank you very much for having me on. Everybody out there, I appreciate you tuning in. You can catch me on Lakers Nation, as Nick mentioned. Formerly of Basketball Insiders, but very happy, very pleased to be with Lakers Nation right now. You catch me on Twitter if you happen to be on there, Jabari Davis NBA.
Well, dude, I got to say, talking with you on the air when it comes to NBA is always such a pleasure and such a joy, because it's almost like, you can sit at a bar, talk basketball with you, and have some fun with it. No rancor, no nothing, just no nonsense, straight talk, especially coming from you, and with your reputation in the game and everything like that. I got to tell you, props as always, and good luck to you with Laker Nation. And looking forward to hearing that voice again back on radio with Laker Nation Radio. I saw your Twitter profile there, tough guy. So, pretty cool. Looking forward to that coming back around. But thank you so much, and definitely going to have you on, when preseason comes around, so we can get some more basketball talk going.
Already looking forward to it. Thank you again for having me. I appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. Have a good one.
All right, you too.
And that was Jabari Davis from Lakers Nation, formerly of Basketball's Insider. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you once again for joining me here in the Mad Scientist Sports Lab. My name is Nick Ficarelli. I am the Mad Scientist of Sports. You can find me on Twitter at NAF_inscriber. That's at NAF_inscriber. You can find us live on Blog Talk Radio right here on the Inscriber Media Network. But fear not, ladies and gentlemen, if you can't listen to us from this network, don't fret at all, because this little show just happens to be syndicated on many other networks, and they are I-95 Sports and Entertainment Network, led by Bobby Blackjack Orenti. War Room Sports, led by Devin McMillan and B. Austin. Happy Hour Network, led by Lee Val and Ted Hicks. The Arena Sports Network, led by the Golden Voice himself, Brian Snow. Die Hard Sports Radio, led by Steve Itzkowitz. Sports for Fans, led by Sean Stewart, who you just happen to hear tonight. The Sports Crave, led by Noah Miller and Michael Guido. Nuts and Bolts Sports, led by Joe Cardozo. Late Night Sports Radio, led by Keith Grieve. Draft Utopia, led by Chris Ransom. and, of course, the other people you listen to tonight, the Asylum Sports Network, led by the Ricks, Flieger, and Briggs. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, I just want to say thank you so much for allowing me into your homes. I will be back in 2 weeks. Next week, I'll be on vacation with my family, but fear not, my fearless co-host and apprentice, Andrew Glukov, will be running the board, and he'll be doing a good show for you. I have no doubt about that. But I will be back on August 22nd at 10 p.m. Eastern Time, 7 p.m. Pacific, and it will be a special episode of the Mad Scientist Sports Lab as I will present to you the ladies of fantasy football. And I intend on getting some heavy-duty guests to come right here into the lab. It's time to tone down the beacons. Time to erase the chalkboard and put up some new experiments. Time to get ready for some new test subjects. But until then, ladies and gentlemen, the lab is officially closed. And as always, joyous noise shall take me home.
Place today now.